When you hear the term legally inhumane, what do you think of? I happen to think of American immigration detention centers, and here's why. Immigration detention centers are found all over the United States. As of 2020, there are 200 detention centers and 52,000 adult immigrants being detained. The purpose of immigration detention centers are to legally house immigrants until they are either tried in court, deported to their home country, or in many cases, both things happen. Detention centers constrain both immigrant adults and immigrant children. If you watch or read the news, you have most likely seen dozens of headlines captivating the negligence and abuse that is performed by ICE officials. First, I wanted to give you a brief history of essentially the criminalization of immigration. Criminalizing immigration began around the 1970s with the Naturalization Act. Americans began to go increasingly fearful of immigrants following the attack of the Twin Towers in New York on September 11th. The 9/11 attack essentially granted Americans a way to put their fears into action. Thus, harsh immigration policies were born. Pacification is a fancy term for distraction, which is what the Americans did. They wanted to be distracted from their fears. What do you give a crying baby to distract them from their crying? A pacifier. The use of a pacifier in many ways encourages blindness to or the denial of the etiology of the baby's problem or issue. The first immigration detention center was opened in 1991 and resided in the naval base of Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Fast forward to 1994, President Clinton initiated the Gatekeeper Act. It was essentially an act that doubled Border Patrol officers along a 5-mile radius of the wall in Southern California. Fast forward to 1995, we see a growth in for-profit immigration detention centers in the United States. Now, as of 2020, there are nearly 200 facilities. Dilley, Texas, is home to the largest United States immigration center. It is placed just 75 miles from the Mexican border in Texas. Martin Garbus was a volunteer at the center whose purpose was to help fill out asylum applicants. He was there for 1 week. Martin Garbus writes, "Nearly every one of almost 500 people I saw there was sick. There were at the end of my visit 15 infants in the center." This is 1 week of work. He helped over 500 people fill out asylum applications. The center in question holds 2,400 women and children. Medical care has also come into question at an alarming number of immigrant detention centers. The news articles previously mentioned are often composed of immigrant deaths due to improper medical help. WellPath is a privatized medical team that is found in many detention centers. In addition to at least 5 deaths reviews conducted by ICE that specifically cite issues with the contractor WellPath's treatment of immigration detainees, a recent class action lawsuit spotlighted the company's problematic record, calling the decision to hire medical contractors such as WellPath disturbing. In this suit, more than a dozen current detainees at a variety of detention centers accused ICE of violating the United States Constitution by denying them adequate medical care and failing to provide stronger oversight. Even more disturbing, there are roughly 52,000 adults in detention centers, an all-time high that exceeds funding levels yet again, according to ICE. I'm going to ask you a question. How are immigrants expected to receive proper medical treatment if there is not even a budget to accommodate the amount of people being locked into detention centers? Solitary confinement is a practice used in American criminal justice institutions as a form of punishment. Solitary confinement essentially places the individual in a private cell. They are only allowed to leave for a shower and yard time. All meals are eaten inside of the cell. In some detention centers, placement into solitary confinement is now the main form of psychological treatment for mental health issues. Some facilities even place detainees under suicide watch into solitary confinement. This led to a tragic case of a detainee's suicide in 2019. Solitary confinement is a torturous punishment because it does not let humans be social animals, and this form of punishment has been known to cause mental illness, such as post-traumatic stress disorder, and can be detrimental to those who have previous mental health diagnoses. The United States is making itself to be in a nation of immigration crisis. All immigrants who enter the United States illegally know and understand the risks of being caught, and they have decided that entering the United States is worth the risk. Many immigrants come here as transnationalists, prospering in the United States and sending money back home. Others come seeking refuge from either natural disasters or unsafe living conditions. Illegal immigrants are likely to have jobs under the table, working in hazardous conditions and receiving little pay. The possibility of being detained in an immigration center is always looming over their heads. Despite all the risks, thousands of immigrants come to the United States every single day. The United States continues to offer little help and often criminalizes all immigrants, leaving them to live their lives under strict scrutiny by United States citizens. So I want to go back to legally inhumane. I think I think detention centers are essentially legally inhumane. Ways that we can combat this are gonna be getting the word out. You posting on social media, doing walks, doing protests. That's essentially what's gonna get that spark to help solve this immigration crisis the United States is claiming to be experiencing.